Hey everybody, welcome to Galactic Wisdom. It's good to see you all again. Thank you very much for being here. I'm covering reality today, and we're going to start with the afterlife. What happens when we die? I'm going to talk about the afterlife and lots of other important aspects of reality today. And then at the end of this podcast, I am going to tell you a little bit about my upcoming tour, which starts in about 10 days. So the afterlife. When our biological bodies die, our spirits move into higher dimensions of space around us. An appropriate word to use for these higher dimensions of space is ultra-dimensional space. And that's because these higher dimensions of space are not another dimension, not a different dimension. They're an extension of our existing dimensions. If you think about a three-dimensional object, it also has two dimensions within it. If you think of an ultra-dimensional object like a spirit, it also has three regular dimensions, but it also has dimensions that extend out of those three dimensions. Ultra means extending out of something, a little bit like ultraviolet, which is light that extends from visible light outwards. So when our biological bodies die, our ultra-dimensional spirits move into higher or ultra dimensions of space around us. The spirits of deceased friends and family members, they know when it's time for us to pass away, for our spirits to move into the spirit realm, because those spirits are able to see into the future. The travel of information and consciousnesses through time is very real. That's how people can have premonitions and premonitory dreams. We have a psychic sense for what is going to happen in the future, which contributes to our intuition. So our spirits, our spiritual consciousness is always just probing a little bit ahead of us into the future, which is a survival advantage. It's an adaptation, and we're evolving to be able to have this ability stronger and stronger because it's beneficial to us. So if you imagine when we lose the anchor of our biological bodies, then our spiritual consciousnesses are free to move far more easily. And we are freed up to travel through time. We can do that to some extent when we astrally project or astrally travel. That is, our spiritual consciousnesses projecting into the past or the future to see what's there. And on multiple occasions, I have proved, when I have done this with groups of people, that the travel, the astral projection of our consciousnesses through time is real. Because when we go to the past, we can see things going on that we can then go back and check and confirm, did those things happen? We can look at things from different angles, from above, from the other side. We can move underground and see what's there when we astrally project, essentially remote viewing. And so we can prove that the past is real. Well, we know the past is real. We can prove that we can really see into the past. Proving that you can move into the future is a little trickier because that hasn't happened for us yet at our location in temporal time. But we can do the same thing looking into the future as when we look into the past, and we have the same kind of experiences. We perceive the same things. We can communicate with the same beings. And so there's no reason to think that isn't true also. And we actually have beings from the future that we work with, me and people in my coalition of light that we work with. So we know that's true also. So our family members who have passed away, being spirits, they are able to travel into the future and see when it is we're going to die. Now, there are occasions when spirits can intervene, where if you're just about to have a car crash, then a spirit can come down and maybe try and nudge you away from that car crash. Sometimes people experience that, but that doesn't typically happen. Most people don't get spirits saying, hey, you're just about to die, you need to do this instead. That goes against spirit realm rules. But the spirit, your spirit family can be there and will be there waiting for you when you pass away, to welcome you into the spirit realm. It's a little bit like a birth, okay, where, or at least after birth party or gathering, where you are greeted into a new world by loving people, hopefully, and then you embark on a new life. So when we go into the spirit realm and we're greeted by these people, we feel an intensity of love that is very unusual. And a lot of people have near-death experiences where they come close to death or they actually die, and then they experience a few things. Sometimes they experience a tunnel that they're moving through. That's not a literal tunnel. That is a narrowing of our three-dimensional perceptions into the center of our vision, enabling extra-dimensional perceptions to come in around the outside. That's what the transition tunnel is. But then people are often greeted with light and with love and a great intensity of welcome. And this is important because when people die, often they're moving from quite a traumatic experience, and a lot of people don't know what's going to happen when they die. So to be welcomed into a very loving environment is very important and special and meaningful. But when people have near-death experiences, they die, but then they're brought back to life, or they come back to life. It wasn't a permanent death. Then they talk about experiencing these things: the transition tunnel, an intense feeling of love. And then what happens? Well, imagine it's a new life. You have new perceptions. You have ultra-dimensional perceptions around you. You're essentially a baby or a toddler in a new place. You don't know anything about this new place. You're taken by your family or friends, whichever community is greeting you. They take you to your new home in the spirit realm. And that new home, we've moved on from the very basic concepts of heaven and hell. We don't get a separation like that. There's not a separation of heaven and hell. There is, the spirit realm is all around us, and there are communities all around us. And, there's different degrees of good spirits and bad spirits. That much is certain, because we can interact with those spirits through mediums and through paranormal investigations. So we know that there's not like a whitewashing of no everybody becomes supremely good or everybody just stays evil. So you go off into your different respective places in the spirit realm. It could be a family-based environment, or it could be a culturally based environment, or it could be a religious-based environment that you're taken into. And that is determined by the spirits that know you and what would be best for you. And then you become new members of their spiritual families. And they initiate for you a new spiritual education and acclimation. This is important wherever you go. You go to a new country, you don't know what's going on, you have to learn stuff. Well, that's what happens when you get to the spirit realm. You're going to have to learn stuff. You don't instantly know everything. That's not how it works. So people's personalities remain intact when they die. I'm sure if you were given a choice, would you like your personality to remain intact when you die, or not? Then, well, most people, that's interesting. I've just been joined by some kind of advanced non-human being here. They just arrived right next to me. Welcome. Thank you for being here. If you were to have the choice, are you going to stay the same character, same person, or not? Most people would want to stay the same. But of course, that means that all the things we like doing that maybe are not perfectly pure and wonderful, they stay with us. You know, we have the same feelings, instincts, emotions, personalities. It would be a bit impositional if somehow they could whitewash that away from you. That doesn't seem like a very moral thing to me, but that's not what happens anyway. So when you go to the spirit realm, yes, we're greeted by all this love and beauty and wonder, but that's like the love of parents protecting their children and taking their children into their new environment. The spirit realm does contain darknesses. It does contain good people and bad people. It contains, sadly, it contains politics and belief systems which are different. It contains conflicts. Now, I'm telling you what I know to be true based on experience and conversations with spirits and mediums. So I'm telling you this stuff from a perspective of evidence forming proof. I'm obviously not telling you from a perspective of religion, because religions are different from what I'm describing. But if we want to know what's real, then we have to look at reality and see how it is in order to determine what's real. We have, looking in an ancient book that's trying to tell us what is real about what happens when you die. Well, that might be evidence. They might have some wisdom there. They might have some insight, but that's a very low level of evidence, reading something that somebody wrote a long time ago. Anybody can write anything. Anybody can believe anything. So there are rules and laws in the spirit realm. If there weren't, then anybody that's in the spirit realm could interact with humans in any way that they want. And that could be dark interactions, which happen when spirits break the rules. It could be good interactions. It is spiritually possible for a spirit, for all of the spirits in the spirit realm, to come and start helping us all, to come and start giving us advice, to come and start influencing us. But that is against the law. That is against the rules of the spirit realm. There are restrictions about what information they can divulge to living people about the spirit realm. Like, you'd think, well, if these spirits exist, why don't they just tell us what happens when we die? Well, they're not allowed to. And I've had direct proof of that. I'll tell you an example, and it's kind of a long story, but I'll tell you a little bit of an example here. There was a lady that I met a couple of years ago who, when they heard that I was interested in aliens, that I knew a lot about aliens, she started to question me about aliens. Turns out she was having experiences herself, and had experiences over the course of her life. And she was interested in hearing my take on it. And she was asking me all these questions, and she started to realize by the way that I was answering the questions is that I was actually tuned into reality rather than superstition and beliefs that are nonsensical. And she ended up telling me her story, and I ended up helping her. And her story is that when she was young, she had something like a growth on part of her body, and it was growing a little bit bigger, and they went to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, whatever it is, it's small, it seems to be inert. We don't need to do anything about that right now. But then when she was significantly older, I forget the exact age, but probably about 18, this growth, it started to get bigger and bigger and bigger and expand. And she had experiences with aliens, so she at least had the idea that it could be alien related. But anyway, it started to get uncomfortable, and so they went to the doctor, and the doctor decided that the surgeon decided that she didn't need to be sedated, and she couldn't because of some drugs she was on. But they cut open that growth. It was close to the surface of the skin, so it was above muscle, below skin. It wasn't like an organ. And they cut it open, and out came the contents, and out came the contents that were over 20 little tiny undeveloped fetuses. And it was very bizarre because it was on an area of the body above muscle that had nothing to do with, reproductive areas. And everybody was startled. The mother was there at the same time, and the surgeon was startled. And so they sent these little fetuses off to labs to get tested. Unfortunately, these samples got lost upon the way, and the results never made it back to them because the samples went missing. Anyway, later in life, when she met me, she wanted to know what was going on, and there was still something underneath the skin in that location, and to feel it felt like a metallic disc. To feel it through the skin, it felt like a metallic disc, so it wasn't the same as what had happened previously. Anyway, I asked if she would be open to trying to communicate with the beings that may have put that there. And so that's what we did. I held a little meditation with a couple of medium friends, and we tried to connect with the alien beings. Hey, you can come in and walk around. It's okay. That's okay. So we tried to connect with the alien beings who were who had put that in her, and they didn't want anything to do with us. Probably Greys, probably typical Greys. But what was interesting is when we were trying to communicate with those beings, a human spirit came through. A human spirit, and it was the human spirit of this woman's grandfather. And as soon as the grandfather came through, we started to be able to communicate with the grandfather, and we started to discover some interesting things about the grandfather at that point. Now, this was not like in the middle of a meditation where we can't communicate with each other. This was a conscious, open discussion going on, and conversation with the mediums, with the woman, with me, with the spirit of her grandfather. And the grandfather, and this is something the woman actually knew already, but the grandfather had worked in the US military. And I didn't know at this time, but the woman did, that the grandfather had worked for a time at Area 51. Now, I don't know. I don't think she knows how high up he was. She doesn't think that he was very high up, but there's a connection there. And the grandfather was quite upset that because of his connections with the military there, his granddaughter had been chosen by these Greys, or maybe even in some kind of a coordinated agreement with humans and Greys, but she had been chosen to be a subject of whatever it is they were doing, which is basically reproduction experiments and procedures. But we the point I'm making here is we were able to have a very detailed conversation with this grandfather, and he was able to tell us certain things, and he was not able to tell us certain things. And these mediums that I was working with, because there were two of them, because they were hearing the same answers, there was confirmation of everything. And the woman was also able to confirm the details that they were getting from the grandfather. And he one expression, I'm probably paraphrasing, but one expression he used was, "You're asking the wrong questions." In other words, he wasn't allowed to answer certain questions, but if we asked the questions differently, then he was allowed to answer those questions. And so we did gain some interesting insight about the spirit realm, about aliens through this one person. And this is one of many that I've communicated with. And the things that I'm telling you are correct. They are true according to the spirits that I've communicated with. So when you go to the spirit realm, if you have the intention of coming back and meeting with somebody that you know in your life, well, there are rules and procedures about how you can do that. You can go to your own funeral. You can be at your own funeral. In the days following your death, you are allowed to attempt to appear to close family members, actually in reality, like a spiritual apparition coming forwards, basically stepping from higher dimensional spaces into our three-dimensional space, so people can see you. They often don't, but you know, millions of people have seen close to the time of somebody's death that sort of the apparition of that person. You're allowed to come into people's dreams at night, and that's not really like a process like you open up a door to their dream and you're in there walking around. It's more like when the spiritual consciousness comes close to our brains, then, well, our brains are electrochemical and spirits are electromagnetic. The electromagnetic fields can affect our electromagnetic perceptions so that we can perceive them and they can communicate with us. It's a little bit like walking up to somebody when they're asleep and whispering in their ear, and then the person can hear what's going on in their ear, and they may even put that into their dream. That's what you're allowed to do. What you're not generally allowed to do is to, if you've made an agreement with, say, a paranormal investigator friend, you're not generally allowed to, a month later, come back and sit down with them and try and have an open conversation. You can, with approved psychics or mediums, you can have a formal conversation through that channel. That's an accepted channel of communication, an accepted medium of communication through a medium. And if you go to places like paranormal conventions, if you intend to go and talk to a medium, then when you get to that medium and you're sitting in front of a genuine medium, well, whoever you want to talk to, they know that already, because there is the travel of information through time. And so the spirits are there waiting next to the medium, waiting for you to start the conversation. And within the parameters and rules of the spirit realm, you can then have a conversation with the spirit through that medium. And that's a really cool thing. You know, if you get a real medium, then you can have a real conversation with real spirits. But some mediums are extremely good. Some mediums are not so good. Some mediums think that they're mediums and they're actually not. They just make up fanciful sort of fantasies in their mind that people like, and they say positive things that everybody is going to enjoy. But there are real mediums out there. Okay. So the next thing on my list is God. Now we've talked about God before, but I'm gonna try and explain why people think there's a God, what evidence comes forward that is God, but not actually God. People misinterpret some of these things for gods. Now, in the spirit realm, there are a lot of very good, very kind human spirits, and they like to help living people in a few different ways. Actual spirits who are in the spirit realm, some of them like to come down and act as spirit guides to living people. Maybe some of the people listening to this podcast have spirit guides of people who used to live in the physical realm. Sometimes those spirit guides are mistaken for being God, nudging them, giving them advice, giving them information. Sometimes they're mistaken for angels, but these are spirits of deceased people who are coming in to help living people. And sometimes they get misidentified. Often they get misidentified. But if you're a good spirit, that doesn't really matter to you. What matters is that you're helping people. Some of these people nudge, as I've already said earlier on, they nudge living humans away from dangerous situations. Sometimes these spirits give messages or signs to living people. So sometimes people will see, let's see. I was going to name somebody famous that you would absolutely know about, and a sign that they told me about. But I think that conversation was in confidence, so I'm not going to reveal that actually. But let me give you a general example. Somebody I know who is quite famous in this field. They told me about their wife who had passed away, and that they had a special connection to butterflies, and that every once in a while they would somehow connect a butterfly to the spirit would connect a butterfly to the living husband. And this could be coincidence, it could be synchronicity. It's the butterfly itself is a real butterfly. It's not going to be like a spiritually transmuted spirit into a butterfly, but spirits do have manifestation abilities, which means that they can, if there's a butterfly in the area, they can sort of, blow a little bit of wind so the butterfly moves towards this person, or they can maybe go into the mind of the butterfly and maybe suggest to the butterfly, you can go in that direction, not with language, but with sort of idea. But what actually happened is every once in a while, this man would see a butterfly, and he would feel that it was his wife communicating with him. Spirits can do that sort of thing to some extent. Also, coincidentally, butterflies, or just randomly butterflies, people see butterflies in their lives. So, it doesn't have to always be a spirit. But that's one example of what spirits in the spirit realm can do. Sometimes the spirits of humans that are in the spirit realm answer the prayers of living people. Let's say you're praying to God, please God, help me to whatever it is. Could be help my child to pass an exam. Maybe that's not the kind of thing that spirits often get involved with, but okay, help my child to survive this illness. How about that? If there is a human spirit in the spirit realm who hears, maybe it's like a grandfather hears their granddaughter praying, please God, help my child to survive this illness. Well, if that grandfather has the ability to go in there and help out his great grandchild, why wouldn't he? Of course he's going to do that. He cares about his granddaughter. He cares about his great grandchild. He's going to go in there and help that child if he can. And spirits are allowed to do that, especially if somebody has reached out to them in prayer. or reached out to anybody in prayer. So the fact that you're praying to God and a human spirit answers, that doesn't, that happens. That can happen. We can understand that that is something that might well happen. It doesn't mean that God is real, but a lot of people would interpret that as being that God is real. And the spirit that does the helping, they might actually be a religious spirit who also believes in God. And so they may feel like they're doing it in the name of God. But none of that means that God is actually real. That's something that, I talked a lot about last time. Let's see. And I've already said healing is something that these spirits can give to us. So many things that people interpret or make a deduction, make a guess, and make an assumption that's an act of God. Many of those things are not actually acts of God, they're acts of spirits. I will let you know that I was raised as a child to believe completely in God, and so I did. Because I wanted to be able to prove to others that God was real, I actively spent the first half of my life looking for evidence of the reality of God. Because I wanted to go and be able to say to people, I'm a space scientist, I'm a paranormal investigator, and I found evidence of God. Hey, you should listen to me. But even though I found plenty of very strong and tangible evidence and even proof for aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, spirits, healing, premonitions, life after death, and a wide variety of other paranormal phenomenon, I never encountered any tangible evidence of any kind of God. Instead, I found numerous airtight proofs that God didn't create us, or the earth, or the sun, or anything else that I could establish. And I say that as a scientist who understands how the earth was formed, how the universe came into being. I understand evolution. I say all these things as a scientist, that I found only proofs that God didn't do things that people said, well, God did that. And I realized that the most important claim about a God, that the God that I was taught about, that I believed in when I was younger, the most important claim about God, that he was a supremely moral being, was obviously not true if he were to exist. All I need to do is look at the news for 5 minutes and see all of the horrific levels of pain and suffering and death all around the world to see that if there really were a God, then he or she or it or they clearly would have to be infinitely less empathic than me, caring, less loving than me, less moral than I am. Because when I see people suffering, I help them. I try to help them. And I'm not a God. I don't have godlike abilities, but if I had them, I would use them. And yet, if there were a God who is a moral God, then when the God were to see the same suffering that I see, I know that if there were a God who was a moral God, he would do something about it. Be okay with that. Now, this is simple logic that tells us that there is not that supreme God of morality. And in order to counter that kind of a logical, obviousness, over the years, people have come up with various different ways of countering, that argument that I just gave there. But none of them really make any sense. With one religion, obviously, people say, well, God gave us free will, and so that's why there's pain and suffering on the planet. But free will is it just exists in the same way that oxygen exists. there's no other state that you could exist in unless you're born into servitude or slavery. You can't not have free will. That's just a fundamental part of existing in the universe. And to say that God gave us that, well, that's not true. It just, at least there's no proof of it that anybody has ever been able to give to me. Now, you can believe that he gave us free will, but belief is not the same thing as knowledge. People do suggest in Christianity, which was, or at least Judaism and Christianity, in Genesis, that original sins came from a serpent in the Garden of Eden, and then Eve got involved, and then Adam got involved, but as intelligent modern human beings, we should be able to look at those things and understand those are just stories. There wasn't really a snake or an Adam or an Eve who was responsible for humans on the planet today causing all the pain and suffering. Okay, we can't. If there were a God who's saying, "Well, it's all the serpent's faults, and there's nothing I can do about that now," that just doesn't work. Some people say, "Well, all of the pain and the suffering, it's okay. It's part of reality that has a God in it, because we signed a soul contract before we came into this world." See, what's happening is good people look at reality and they see that there's pain and there's suffering. We see that there's unfairness. We see that there's injustice, and it doesn't feel right to us. It really doesn't feel right. When you have had somebody do something bad to you, it doesn't feel good. Somebody on the road a couple of days ago, hand gesture, which I will not describe or show you, but it was very unpleasant and completely unnecessary. And it made me feel bad, and it made me feel like that's not right. How can that person do that and not have anything bad happen to them? So people in their lives have come up with theories and ideas to explain, wow, how can this all be okay? One of the ideas is karma. Whatever people do that's bad, there's an equal balance to they will have bad done upon them, and vice versa. If you do something good, then good will happen to you in an equal amount. But that's not reality. And we can see that's not reality when you look at the news and you see that young babies, like a baby hospital is bombed and all of those babies die and things like that. We can see those babies didn't do anything wrong. They don't deserve the death that they just had. And so many of my friends are suffering in ways that they don't deserve. Karma is not a thing. So then people say, well, to make this work, the karma has to happen when you die. You have to be judged when you die. But this is all just stories. None of this is true. None of this there's evidence for or proof of it. It's all just stories to make us feel better. The law of attraction is something similar. This word that we use called justice, which is, somebody does something bad to you. We have to balance the scales. Literally, we have to balance the scales of doing bad by doing bad to them in an equal amount that they did to us. That's an eye for an eye. That's a tooth for a tooth. This is revenge. Justice and revenge are inseparable. The moral and ascended thing to do with somebody that's doing bad things is to move away from them, get away from them, and not harm them in any way. Just move away from them to the extent that's possible. Now, if they are imminently causing direct pain to somebody, like they're just about to hit somebody, intervening in that situation, that's okay. That's preventing pain and violence that is absolutely going to happen. But people get this world is so messed up with people who are hurting others before the others hurt them preemptively, and hurting others that they've judged via indirect logical processes or rational processes, reasonable processes to be guilty when actually they're not. The world is very messed up. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to get back to what I was saying before. Soul contracts. Before we die, we signed a contract that we're going to have this pain and this injury and this illness, and we're going to die horribly at this point in time. What a warped idea. What a warped idea that we are confronted with I don't know how it works, like a list of these are all the bad things that are going to happen to you. Sign off on it. If you sign, that's appalling. It's a very immoral system. Why would we have to experience those bad things in our lives? And, I'm asking a rhetorical question. I'm sure people would be able to answer this question too. But it's nonsense. It's all nonsense. People are coming up with theories to make themselves feel better. And that's one of the biggest problems in the whole of the paranormal and spiritual and alien realm, is that in fact throughout life, people form an opinion, a belief system about reality that makes them feel comforted, that makes them feel like this world is better than it really is. But it's deluding yourself. It's not a process of objectively, rationally looking at what is in reality and then forming an accurate determination on what is real. Soul contracts? No, not true. Okay. Let's see. It has been estimated that over 18,000 different gods and deities have been worshipped by humans over the course of human history. And all of them were created by humans. When we look back at those past gods, it's easy for people today to look at all those 18,000 gods and think, well, Woden and Thor and all these different gods that are out there, they were all created by humans, right? But then there's this thing, this sort of, what is it called? Like a mental dissonance, a cognitive dissonance, where people will look at all of the other 17,999 gods that humans have created and say, well, those are all clearly wrong, but mine is right. No, that's not how it works. We're the same species as all of those people in the past who created all of those different gods. And they're different types of gods that are contradictory to each other. They can't all be right. In fact, if you really want to know what is true, then you have to let go of the idea of belief altogether. You have to give up believing in things, because believing in things is taking a leap of faith, is accepting something as being true without proof. And if you accept something as being true without proof, it's an intellectual mistake. And we can look at those 7,999 intellectual mistakes of other people in the past and understand that those are intellectual mistakes, but for some reason we can't do it with our own belief systems, even when it's obvious that the only reason why we believe what we currently believe is because we were born into a society that believes that. So I've probably said enough about that subject now. Let's now move on to consciousness and consciousnesses. I think I'm going to take a sip of hot chocolate before I continue. Cadbury's hot chocolate, very good stuff. Our spiritual brains and consciousnesses are very agile. They can travel around through time and space, and they can expand outwards into large consciousness fields. So we can be localized as a spiritual consciousness, but we can also expand outwards. I do this when I connect with different alien beings a lot, is me and the people in our group, we fill up the atmosphere with our consciousness. It becomes non-localized, and we can extend it up beyond the atmosphere into space as a consciousness field. And countless trillions of advanced consciousnesses throughout the universe can do the same thing. This results in a universal spiritual consciousness network and a universal spiritual consciousness field, like an electric field or a magnetic field, a universal consciousness field. We can connect with that consciousness network. We can connect with that consciousness field. We can feel it. And when consciousnesses come close to us, that field becomes intense and we can feel it strongly. And I can feel it around me, like the being that popped in about 30 minutes ago to come and show support for what I'm doing. We can connect with it. We can feel with it. We can feel it. But it isn't one consciousness. This is a common misconception. It's fashionable now to say we are all one. No, we're not. I'm one and you're one. That makes two. And there's billions and trillions of others. We're not one. That's incorrect mathematics. Okay. If we were all part of one consciousness, then we would all be conscious of the thoughts, the feelings, the experiences, the relationships, etc., of all of the people and all of the animals on this planet, of all of the spirits in the spirit realm, and of all of the alien life forms throughout the entire universe. But we're not. We're not conscious of what I'm not conscious of what you're thinking right now. You're not conscious of what I'll be thinking when I end this podcast. You might be able to guess, but we're not conscious of what everybody else is conscious of. We are not one consciousness. It's like 2 + 2 = 4, which means that 2 + 2 is not equal to 23.5. We're not one consciousness. Okay, think about the words we're using. There isn't a single one universal consciousness, but we can connect with a universal consciousness network. The difference between a universal consciousness network and a universal consciousness is a bit like the difference between there being just one computer on this planet, that's like a universal consciousness, and there being an international network or internet of billions of computers on our planet. There is not just one big computer on this planet. There's lots of them all over this planet that can connect with each other over the internet, the international network. And that's what the universal consciousness network is like. There are lots of consciousnesses all around this universe, and they can connect with each other. And a lot of them do. And we're just starting as the human species. We're just starting to get better at connecting with that consciousness network. I teach people how to do it. That's something I do 4 or 5 times a week. And through that consciousness network, we can communicate with a lot of different beings, and we can reach them instantaneously, and we can astrally project anywhere in the universe to any one of them. It's pretty cool. There is, what have I got written down here? So in a similar way to what I've just described, there is not just one consciousness in the universe. There is an international network of consciousnesses. Okay, I just repeated myself. Let's see. There's a lot more to talk about, but I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming tour that I am going on, and that you're invited to come to my events if you would like. So this tour here, let's see, I'm going to make it bigger in my screen so I can see it properly. I am going to be leaving this nice warm house in 10 days to live in my car for about 5 months in the in winter time, so I'm a little bit crazy. But I'm going to be traveling around the US. And what I'm showing you on my screen is the first part, just the first part of that tour. I am starting on November 30th in Bakersfield, California. I'm going up to Fresno and Sacramento. I am moving across into Reno, Nevada. There's going to be some cool stuff happening in Reno. And then I'm heading back down through Nevada, going to host an event as close to Area 52 as is possible and legal, to Area 51 as is legal and possible. Then I'm going to be hosting events in Las Vegas where lots of beings live, tall whites and reptilians and other cool stuff. And then I'm continuing through Utah, Arizona, going back to Sedona, where there's really cool stuff going on, going to Overgard, to the Sitgreaves National Forest, where Travis Walton was taken in the real-life version of the movie Fire in the Sky. I'm doing New Mexico through to Oklahoma. Oklahoma City is going to be a cool one. Moving up into Kansas. Now, I used to live in Kansas, so I have a lot of connections with human beings and with spirits and with mediums and with aliens in Kansas and Missouri. So that's going to be cool in that area. And I'm going all over the place: Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, going to Hopkinsville, excuse me, Nashville, Memphis, etc., etc. And so there's going to be lots of cool stuff going on there. And I invite you to join me in all of those places. Now, after the schedule that I just showed you, I'm then going to head out to the East Coast. And I've not been, other than New York and one or two other states in that area, New Jersey, I've not been all around the East Coast, so this is going to be my first visit to the East Coast. If you would like to get involved with that, then I invite you to join my Patreon group at the address, the web address that is presently showing on the screen. If you would like to support me by helping pay for a bit of my gas money and a bit of food, then do join one of my tiers, because this is what I do. And if I don't have kind-hearted people supporting me by joining tier 1 or tier 2 of my Patreon group, then I can't pay my bills or eat or travel or tour. So there it is. I would like to thank all of you for watching today. I send you peace, love, and well-being. Take care. Goodbye for now.